she had ever had anywhere. She had formed none at school, where she had been viewed as a kind of barbarian, an uncivilized Westerner, no matter how hard she had tried to fit in. She had formed none in Clayville, where she had been viewed as an outsider because of her schooling and the long absences it had entailed. There had only been Charity, and now even that thin bond was cut. "And who the blazes is Grant Summers, anyhow?" she muttered, and kicked at a stone, only to be painfully reminded that she was barefoot. "That is what I call adding insult to injury," she groaned as she bent to rub her sore toes. Suddenly, she was all too aware that she was standing in the streets of Clayville in her nightgown. The cloak was adequate cover, but knowing that a thin cotton nightgown, somewhat torn by Clovis's rough hands, was all she wore beneath it, was enough to cause her acute embarrassment. Glancing around, she was both relieved and frightened to find the streets deserted. She realized how very late it was. That meant that probably no one had witnessed her being thrown out, but it also meant she would have even more difficulty in finding someone to help her. There was always the sheriff, she mused, but she did not see how Martin could help her. Hers was a family problem, not a legal one. Leanne did not think there was any law against a parent throwing a child out into the street. "I'm not your ma." Charity had certainly not acted much like any mother Leanne had ever heard of or met. Other mothers might be aloof, but none of them had had a succession of gentleman friends, as Charity called them. Or if they did, they were far more discreet about it. Probably had more taste, too, Leanne thought nastily as her anger began to rise. Everything she owned, little as it was inside that house. She decided that was reason enough to go to the sheriff. It was robbery, plain and simple. If the woman was going to thrust her out into the streets, she could at least thrust out what belonged to her as well. With a final glare at the house, Leanne marched off to the sheriff. By the time she saw the sheriff, she had pushed aside her hurt and confusion, replacing it with anger. She did not stop to wonder why the sheriff was lurking outside the bank. He looked horrified when she marched up to him. Leanne decided he was probably just shocked. She doubted he had seen many young ladies wandering around in the middle of the night half-dressed. "Sheriff, I require your assistance." "Get out of here, Miss Summers," he croaked. "Go on, get out of here." "I would," she snapped, "if I had some place to get out of here, too." "Is there something wrong?" she asked, when she noticed how he kept looking in the window of the bank. "Is there supposed to be a light on in there?" She glanced at him curiously when he groaned. He was shaking, and his eyes were the most restless she had ever seen. The sheriff's gaze flickered nervously over the town, to her, to the inside of the bank, and back to the town. She felt he ought to be concentrating on the bank, for Mr. Poitier never left a light on. "I think you ought to look into this, Sheriff," she said, as she sidled up to the window. "Please go home, Miss Summers," he said, a distinct tremor in his voice. "I have no home to go to. That's what I came to speak to you about." Standing on her tiptoes, she was just able to peer in the bank window. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. There were 5 masked men in the bank, and they were in the last stages of picking it clean. She looked at the sheriff, sure he must be aware of what was going on, but he just stood there, staring at her. "The bank is being robbed," she hissed. "Aren't you going to do something?" "Please go home, Miss Summers," he whined. "I keep telling you I have no home to go to." "Well, if you are just going to stand there and cower, I shall do something." She yanked his gun out of his holster.